Welcome to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast, where in every episode we explore what is research culture and what should it be. You'll hear thoughts and opinions from a range of contributors to help you change research culture into what you want it to be.
Welcome. My name is Ged Hall and I'm an academic development consultant for research impact at the University of Leeds. All of the episodes I contribute to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast focus on some aspect of research impact, and they're all available via a playlist, which is in the show notes. I've also recently started a playlist called Research Impact Heroes, which I will be adding to periodically. That link is also in the show notes. But today's episode doesn't really fit into either of those categories, although there are some reasons that we may go into that it could have fitted into the Research Impact Heroes list. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Tony Bromley. Until recently, Tony was a co-host on the Research Culture Uncovered podcast. We haven't yet taken him off the podcast homepage because I think we're all in denial, me especially. But before we let Tony enjoy his well-earned retirement, we had to have him back to benefit from his humour, his experience and expertise, and maybe even his guitar playing. Check out the podcast song episode. That's also in the show notes. Tony, it's great to be sat here with you live having this chat today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I've got a challenge now. You said humour and expertise. So I'll try my best as we go through.
Well, we'll see. I'm sure we'll be able to crack a few jokes. Probably old man jokes that nobody else will understand.
Yeah, and probably outside of development, we've got our cricket and football and things, haven't we?
We have, yeah, absolutely. So, Tony, we've known each other since about 2004, I think it is. And that's not long after I got my first role as a researcher developer. So I started at Nottingham in December, late December, actually, 2003. And it's actually pretty amazing how similar our different career paths have been. So, for instance, you did your PhD at Leeds between 1988
and 92. Yeah.
And I did mine between 90 and 93. And we never met each other, did we?
No, not that we're aware of.
No, well, we didn't have courses then to kind of mix between the disciplines. So
no.
Me being a chemist and you being in engineering, we kind of like...
And for context, we also didn't have social media, we didn't have internet, we didn't have emails that might have come across each other's paths. So
no, I remember actually registering for the Amdahl. You remember the mainframe that the university had?
It was it Janet, the other word?
Yes. And I had a mate who I'd been at university with in London, and I knew he was doing a PhD at Bath. So I guessed what his email address might be. So that was the first email I ever sent. I think it was during the late part of my first year of PhD. So that must have been about 1991, my first email.
Yeah.
And it bounced.
Oh,
because I got it wrong. And I met up with him, and he didn't even have an email address. So
it wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked anyway. Yeah, and then you went into industrial R&D, which I did too. Yeah. So although I did a bit longer, so your industrial R&D was between 92 and 96.
Yes,
where I did 10 years.
Right.
Yeah. And then you did a postdoc, and then moved into a teaching fellowship back at Leeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, I applied for a postdoc about halfway through my 10 years in industry at Manchester, and they offered it to me, but the interview process was so weird that I decided not to go for it. But it was good leverage to kind of get a few more things at work that I really wanted that I wasn't getting.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well. Anyway, coming back to you rather than talking about me, which I always end up doing.
That's okay.
So the other thing that kind of links together was during that teaching fellowship, you developed your interest in development, didn't you?
Yeah.
That really took off at that time. And that's when you joined UMIST. So for those of you who don't remember that, University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology.
Yes.
Now, it was in the latter stages of you being there where it merged with Manchester, was it?
Yeah. So it became I mean, there was no way they weren't going to have the words University of Manchester in the title when the two institutions merged. So, yes, University of Manchester merged with UMIS and became University of Manchester.
Yes, absolutely. And you started your permanent research and development role in 2002, so about 18 months or so
Yeah,
before I did. And then you returned to Leeds in 2006.
yes.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, when that role was advertised, we both knew that we'd each look at it really strongly,
Absolutely, yeah.
didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
For all sorts of reasons that we'd shared with each other up to that point. Now, I decided not to apply mainly because my marriage at that time hadn't quite fallen apart. If it had a few months later, a few months later, actually, when it did, I really wish I had applied to it. But anyway, that's water under the bridge now, and obviously we've been. Um, I really enjoyed working with you since that 2004.
Yeah.
And then when I joined Leeds, we were able to deepen that collaboration. So I joined in 2011.
Yes.
And that's where I kind of go, that's where the research impact hero bit could have been, because I know
It's kind
all of
you
the
too.
work that you did around evaluation of
Yeah.
training, and how we talked about how that could move into how do you evaluate
Yes.
research impact really helped me at the time kind of cement that, and really I still use that information today in terms of helping researchers think about. So yeah, you could definitely be in the research impact hero bit, but I think it's right that it stands aside. So yeah, welcome to it.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
So as I've said in that long rambling intro, you've been in research and development since 2002 and obviously always been passionate about it. So tell us some more about what actually kindled that passion, maybe during that teaching fellowship that you did.
Yeah, it's this where I have to sort of rock back in my old chair like the old man and say, "Oh, what I remember in 1992." Um, I suppose if I tell my sort of story in a development context as well, in terms of the context of what I went on to do, I think I reached a point in the research that I was doing at the time that I think a number of people reach. And some people who've done the degrees, PhDs, and postdocs in the subject area, there's an often talk in our area about failure in terms of not becoming the academic in that field and moving to something different. And perhaps that's a theme that we might want to talk about in terms of the culture. But I really did recognize that I did material science and engineering. So all up until I got the professional development role, it was all my work was in material science and engineering. But I really got the sense when I went into the teaching role, actually, I wasn't interested in the research. And at the time, I was like many postgraduates going into postdoc positions. If you'd have asked me, I'd have said I wanted an academic role. But there was a few things. I realized I wasn't passionate enough about it.
Mhm.
I realized I didn't care. And I also felt I wasn't good enough. And I didn't mean that in a negative sense. I looked at the academics around the room, and when we sit and have coffee, and the mathematical physicist who was just ridiculous in terms of the mathematics that he could do, really nice guy. He's still at Leeds. And I just thought, I haven't got the passion to do this. But what was happening is I was doing more and more on the teaching side, the teaching fellowship. And I actually really enjoyed working with people. And that, occasionally you're lucky enough for somebody to come up to you at the end and say, "Do you know what, that was really useful. I've actually found something useful out of this." And it's that reward as well. So it's both, it's for yourself and it's for, you've been, I think there's a selfishness in it as well. So I just found I found that far more rewarding. And also the sort of subject I was doing, I spent a lot of time in electron microscopy rooms. Now, if people know electron microscopy, they'll know what I mean. But if you don't know it, that is a pitch black room. You're looking down an extremely small TV screen with one eyeball. Or sometimes, I mean, it's changed a little bit now. You get computer screens, but you spent a lot of hours looking at inanimate object that wouldn't speak back to you in a darkened room. I needed to go and speak to some people. I needed to get out of that room. So that, I got an interest in the teaching side of things, and then the role at UMIS came up. I also did actually to shout out for the University of Leeds Learning and Teaching certificate at the time, postgraduate certificate in learning and teaching in higher education, which really opened my eyes as well because I was hoping that I was always quite an open scientist, and I wasn't one of those scientists who said, oh, well, let's say some horrendous things, social science is not a science, those sort of things. I wasn't like that, but it was that teaching course that really opened my eyes to what theoretical stuff there was in teaching and how much more it was than what I'd worked out myself and the odd thing here and there. And I just really enjoyed it all. I thought, yeah, this is the sort of thing for me. So I looked over for the development type opportunities. So I did that morphing from one field to another.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's again loads of overlaps with my experiences. Not surprising, really, because it has been a fairly similar trajectory
Yeah,
from kind of fundamental STEM stuff
yeah.
to kind of doing nothing like fundamental STEM stuff. Yeah, it's and a lot of the things you said in terms of, not good enough, not interested enough. I think if I'd have been interested enough, I'd have been good enough.
Well, possibly, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is that.
So yeah. And And the real fun thing you mentioned that definitely applies to me and back in our early days there was a real big injection of cash and
Yes.
resources into kind of absolutely changing the sector and providing training courses. We've laughed just before this interview about, what were the training courses on offer in our
Nothing.
PhD? Health and safety, and did we get anything else? No, we just
No.
floundered about and tried to learn it ourselves, didn't we? So that big injection of cash came from the UK research councils to improve the experience of early career researchers, and it's colloquially known as Robert's money after the man who wrote the report
Yeah.
that led to the
Yeah.
funding. Lovely Gareth, I really miss him.
Yeah.
So what project or activity did that investment enable that you enjoyed the most or got the biggest satisfaction from?
Well, one thing is that in terms of the timings, you talked about the career timings that I had. I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but that Roberts report was released in April 2002.
Hmm.
And I joined UMIST in the role in something like September of that year.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a few things. Obviously, the impact side, it was fascinating for me, so go on to. But I think it was just simply the recognition, the funding, the way it grew the sector massively. It established us. It went on for multiple years. We wouldn't have anything like we have today without that funding. And also, obviously, within that each individual institution got a proportion of money depending upon how many people they had. So all sorts of staff were employed and all sorts of projects happened. The particular interest for me was working nationally with VTI. So when I actually came, I think people know VTI internationally. They're UK-based organisation, but they are known internationally. When I came back from UMIS to Leeds in 2006. I came back into the coordinator role for the Yorkshire North East region. So I got invited to join something which became known as a rugby team, which has done nothing but confuse people over the years. You can still Google rugby impact framework, which
You can.
I've not done for a while, but I presume it still comes up because the internet doesn't forget, does it?
No.
Um, but that was the evaluation question. So I w- I think it's because of the background I came from, and I think a lot of us in this profession come from the same background. We have an interest in research. A lot of us have PhDs, and even if we don't, we've got experience and interest in research. And I felt like the development of researchers needed to be held to the same standard, as it were, if that's the right way of phrasing it. So a lot of what we do, and I think still to this day, we can talk anecdotally. So anything that I did in terms of presentation, it's just a simple example in terms of a course I might have done, a presentation skills workshop. I always challenge myself to how is this researched what I'm telling people, or is this my anecdotal experience and the experience of watching and speaking to people over the years? And it is predominantly the latter rather than the former. And I felt like, well, we haven't even, I still don't think we've done some studies yet. There's one in International Journal for Research and Development about presentation, but have we sat down and watched, I don't know, 1,000 presentations at a conference against some sort of criteria, talked to academics, talked to the researchers, done some changes, and then seeing if the presentations are better received or not. And that work isn't there. So a lot of the impact stuff that I got interested in was because of what I myself personally needed for the body of evidence that I had in my material science subject. I wouldn't have stood up and talked about how you make steel because anecdotally I'd talked to Bob in the steelworks and he said, oh, apparently you throw a bit of this in a bit and it comes out lovely. And I felt, I mean, exaggerating to make the point, but I felt we did too much of that. So that's where I go into the impact. And eventually the impact framework I predominantly wrote as on behalf of the team of people that we had. And that went on to be certainly National UKED. I think it's known to some extent beyond the UK.
Yeah,
but it's a really
absolutely.
it's an interesting challenge to do, actually.
Yeah, it's fascinating you picked up on the presentation side of things because obviously I used to do that course in my early days at Nottingham, and being a chemist, I actually found that the Royal Society of Chemistry had done a bit of observational research.
Yeah.
So they'd in their kind of seminars that they were doing, they would have somebody at the side of the seminar who would estimate the average height of people's heads above the desk.
Right.
And every single presentation, it would start high and get lower and lower as people were getting more and more bored.
Yeah.
which is the hypothesis, I guess. And it was, and then as they recognized that we were coming towards the end of the presentation and moving to the next person presenting, the height of the head would come up. And when you look at the psychology research, that's the curve of recall.
Yes.
So so I did used to talk about that at least
Yes.
in my workshop.
And there's research on the teaching side about lectures and about how you change things and get people's interest back again after 10 minutes and so on. Another examples of straightforward. I'm just choosing straightforward examples. We do quite complex things these days. But project management was another one which I was interested in, and actually the impact work that I've done, people would recognise project management in it. And I'm an engineer, and that's something that I can pin things on. But when you do a course on how to project manage a research degree, I still haven't seen the research where we have even done some social science type research, talked to researchers in different subjects about how did you manage your PhD, and because another aspect of the impact, another aspect of the evidence base is that critique that we often get as a profession from a postgrad researcher that it's too generic. Whatever it is that we're doing is too generic. Well, how you manage your research and your research degree is probably quite different from my scale of engineering through to social science, arts, observational type research. So the person in our sessions may actually be correct to some extent, but there's a whole. I mean, I'd like to see the research. There's the whole vast areas of research untapped that we could find out some fantastic things for, which would help researchers and postdocs going forward.
Yeah, which kind of in some ways disappoints me in that kind of research impact perspective, because all this work that could help to make actually the world a better place and the world of research to be a better place. So coming on to kind of the next question, over the years, we've had our old man conversations and like, oh God, it's still rubbish, isn't it? There's still this that needs to change and that needs to change. And culture change can be really slow, although kind of made me think, when we were in our first roles, it was like most of the academics around the university would go, why do we need that?
Yes, absolutely.
And now it's a case of we haven't got that. Why have we not got that? So it has changed over time, but that culture change can be really slow in academia. So I'm just asking you to kind of look back and go, what aspect of research culture did you really want to and think should have changed but the pace of change you've found really frustrating. So let's get the frustration out of the way.
I think the frustration for me is in the postdoctoral research area in general, and it's beyond the development side. So I think in the UK we've had concordats, and there's been various equivalent sort of some similar sort of things in Australia, the US, and what have you. Um, but when I was doing a PhD in '92, postdocs going from the PhD into postdoc and finding that the academic positions weren't there, and it was contractual work, and the frustrations that people experience in doing that. That was an old thing in 1992. It was decades old in 1992. Now, over my career length, we have done a lot on that side, but it still hasn't really addressed the problem. So it was an eye opener for me in R&D in industry, and I only did it for I think 4 or 5 years. But I was glad I did it because that was a big company, and we worked on various factory projects. But once that factory was up and running, then you moved on to whatever the other problem was. So it was a pool of researchers in R&D who tackled whatever problem came next. But then it struck me in the academic system, we don't do that. So you talked about the postdoc interview you had in Manchester. I started from that context. I was reading postdoctoral job specs in our department, particularly in the area that I was in material science, and I'm thinking, well, that is so specific. There's probably only 2 or 3 people in the UK who could do that, and I think I know all 3 of them, and they're actually got jobs elsewhere.
Yeah.
But certainly what the UK research councils have said, and I agree with in terms of postgrad research, is that it opens up opportunities for you to go all over the place. And one of the things employers are most interested in is the ability to think and how you look at problems. So there's no reason why a university couldn't move to a more of an R&D type setup where it has 10 researchers in material science, and whatever projects come in, you still have the funding to get, and it carries on. You could do that. Of course, what that would do would be far less positions. I think there'd be far less wastage in terms of people going, if it is wastage, people make positive choices to go to other things in the way that I did outside of the science. But we're still there's a limit, and I think we maybe reaching the limit of what we can do to support postdoctoral researchers within the same system.
Yeah, I mean, it's, my experience is exactly the same. When I was in industrial R&D, we might have had we called them contractors, so people on short-term contracts. They probably only made up, 5 to 10% of the total resource, people resource. So, if we're just doing it in headcount, we were about 1,000 strong, something like that. So, not many people really out of that, and the rest of them were all on ongoing contracts, as we call them. But everybody had that almost annual objective to kind of make sure that actually your salary was underpinned by money coming in from the wider business. We were part of a big corporate, so that we'd be getting money from the wider business as well as other clients from outside of our corporate umbrella. And that's the way it works in industry. Why, I guess to some extent, some of the funding issues, only 80% of the full economic cost.
Yes.
Is provide that is an issue where when we were writing a proposal for a client, it was cost plus profit.
Yes.
Which is a big difference in terms of the income to the organization. But it's not a big task to solve that if somebody have the bravery to go.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, enough of the frustration. Shall we get on to the...
Well, I mean, one of the positives is it just, again, it's anecdotal, and I said I wanted evidence-based. I'll do anecdotal. When you've mentioned this already, when the Roberts money first came in, and universities like the University of Leeds were finding they had £200,000-300,000 a year to spend, and that you used to sit around the table at the universities had a graduate board, and there'll be equivalents all over the university sector and system, and that's the graduate board responsible for making sure PhDs operated as they should within the university. And we did to begin with, people saying, "What we're getting this money for? I don't want to do anything. We don't need it. We don't need it. What do we, PhD people, they do the PhD, they do the science. What do they need all this for?" And then I can't remember how many years it was, but of course the government money comes to an end at some point. But it was it 5, 6, 7 years down the line where what we called the Roberts money stopped? It was something like that.
Yeah,
somebody out there will know.
It was at least 3 or 4.
It was a few years, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when I was at Nottingham, we were getting 750,000 each year.
We're probably getting more. I've probably got colleagues, actually, particularly Heather Sears, who used to look after that. She probably if she listens to this,
she'll be going, "It was more than that, Tony. You got a bit seen."
Possibly. But in terms of anecdotally, so I was on the graduate board through the full length period. And we had those, what are we going to do with this? Why do we need the money? And what I loved is when it came to the end, academics around the table saying, "How are we going to cope with this? We need the money. This is, we've done this, that, and the other." And I thought, well, that was a terrific measure of impact. And I just let them talk. I thought, this is nice.
Yes, I'm recording this.
I thought, can I record it? I thought,
I'm folded an ethics approval, but I'm going to record it anyway.
So that change is fabulous. And I think we, as a profession, are established. And I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And I think and I love that there is more of an evidence base there. You've got people like, I've got to mention Kay Guccione and the work she does, and there's so many people I could mention, which I hope I don't offend anybody for not mentioning them, but starting that Research Education Development Scholarship conference. That's what we needed. We needed a conference. Denise Deer was another one who at University of Cambridge, she started what became the International Journal for Research and Development and Scholarship. So this was part of my looking at my original subject area, material science and engineering, and thinking, well, we have a journal, we have a conference, and I think it's just the normal skeleton of academia that would get people talking and develop the evidence base and the opportunity to write and this sort of thing. And those planks are in now. And I think that that wouldn't have happened without the Roberts money coming in, the support of the national organisation, particularly people like Janet Metcalf and Ellen Pierce, who've, Ellen left a few years ago in terms of, I think Janet Metcalf still.
I think so, yes, I think so.
Phenomenal work at lobbying right to the top of government, which we've got a lot to thank for.
Yeah. I really wanted to. So when Ellen got that job, that was another one that I looked at and went, I'd really love to have that job.
Yeah.
But the move between Nottingham and Cambridge just probably wasn't on at that time. Yeah.
I can't say everybody loves us, and you will still find the academics saying, "Well, why do we do this thing?" But yes, it's certainly, we've moved on very positively from where we were.
Yeah. So that's kind of my next question. Can you, what's been the big highlight for you in the changes in the culture since you've been in the profession?
I think, well, to be honest, I might have covered them. I think it is that acceptance, and it is the planks of.
You can do a personal highlight. You don't have to do a.
Well, I mean, I did like the impact work. I enjoyed the impact work, and I enjoyed the impact work that led into the dynamic development work, which I did with another group of people. And I think that I sometimes I don't know how other research developers like yourself think about this, but I sometimes wonder if I am doing research development with researchers for the researchers' whole benefit, or also for my own developmental change as well. So am I using them as a vehicle to develop personally myself? Because I've learned so much from people over the years, and I've learned so much from. One of the things of a personal highlight is I feel like I've got much more appreciation of all sorts of research. I said earlier, I don't think I hope I didn't come into working with researchers across the board as an engineer, thinking only engineering and science
is real research.
I don't think I was that bad. But doing the impact work also opened my eyes in terms of how you do research in other areas. Because I used to joke about it. And if I wanted I used to particularly work on engineering ceramics, and one of the aspects of engineering ceramics, which is that, well, obviously they are quite brittle. They're very strong, but they're brittle. So my PhD was looking at if you can make them a little bit tougher. So I used to make a lump of ceramic, put it in a machine, break it, and get a number. But I soon realised, trying to do the impact work, actually you can't put people in the machine, break them, and get a number. It doesn't work like that. So it was. I perhaps thought that the science research was the harder one, but the more I try to do the impact and working with people, I would probably say it's the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I wholeheartedly agree with your final position that it is harder, mainly because there's so many more variables in a system of humans than there are in a system of materials you squash together into a new form.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I kind of totally agree with that. And just coming on to that, reminded me of another situation. So we'd use Robert's money. Yeah. We keep mentioning his name. He was a fantastic guy.
Well, we wouldn't be here again without.
He supported all our
report.
careers. Yes, absolutely. And so we used some of that money to recruit. And we called them demonstrators, mainly because that was the language that was in vogue at the time. You demonstrated in the lab, or you demonstrated in.
Well, you would have been originally. You would demonstrate and experiment.
Yes, absolutely. But it was to support the presentation skills element. So that meant we could offer more kind of practice sessions to the rest of the postgraduate and postdoctoral community. And we brought them together and we gave them a kind of 1-day training course where they, and it was experiential. They had to give each other feedback and give feedback on the feedback. Mm-hmm. A couple of them were sat at lunchtime and they were just asking each other what they were doing. And there was an applied mathematician, male, talking to, she was doing art history. She was American, looking at European art history. So, yeah. And they started talking about kind of their different methodologies. And I remember about halfway through the conversation, I heard, that's not real research.
Oh, yes.
From the mathematician.
Yeah.
And I could have almost killed him. But I kind of took him to one side and said, your personal bias in that cannot come through when you're watching these presentations.
Yes.
And hopefully the kind of wider message that isn't just that opinion shouldn't be heard. Hopefully he heard the kind of subtext that opinion is actually false too. So hopefully that was the case. So I'm not so sure. He was a bit of an arrogant.
Don't say the other words.
Yeah. So you mentioned dynamic development, which is one of your big legacies for the community of research developers and others, actually, because if you're developing anyone, whether they're a researcher or not, this is a useful kind of theoretical construct to kind of think about. Now, Vitae have just released the update to their researcher development framework. Now, you and I can remember when that was just the joint skills statement, and it was less than a side of A4. Yeah. How would you like the sector to kind of put the two together for maximum benefit?
Well, it's also in that I've only been how long have I been retired? Not that long, but you soon get out of it. So I didn't. There's no reason why I would know that Vitae had done something because I haven't been looking. Yeah. But a new thing coming along, even in those short months. I think the research and development framework, I think, was very effective in getting people to think. Now, some people will agree wholeheartedly and say yes. I can see all the aspects, and I think it's interesting and important. I think other people can say, well, it should have this and it shouldn't have that in it, or do we have a generalized framework? But I think it was very useful in getting people to think, and that's where I come on the dynamic development side. For me, it's I wanting people to think about themselves and how they personally develop and what's important to them and their value systems and all that sort of stuff. So I think the research development framework is a really good starting point and vehicle to challenge yourself. Provided, and nobody in research development framework said it should do this, but some people you can get daunted by thinking. I mean, I look through it. I had, I hope to some extent, a successful research career, and I look down a lot of it and think, well, I'm not very good at that. Maybe I'm not so bad at that, and so, but it still gets you talking about all the sorts of areas that you should think about. And what I was trying to do with the research, the dynamic development stuff is particularly these as a central diagram I have with some dichotomies in it, and I talk about dynamics and statics. So this I haven't spoke about this for ages. What did I say? I'm not sure. I can see the diagram in my head. But that was about me giving some thought to how we develop people theoretically. And this comes from all the thinking about evidence base, but also me learning more about psychology, about social science. And I thought, well, what's the basis for my viewpoint on how I'm developing some person? And I also came to it from the impact work, because in the impact work, there's something called realistic evaluation, and there's a diagram in there that looks like a rugby ball. It's a rugby ball that's got two lines in it, and I've used a diagram in my work, and it's fascinated me for years. So I'd encourage people to look it up. I think it's probably one of the most profound diagrams there is in relation to people and evaluation.
Was it Ray Pawson?
It was Ray Pawson, of course. And I looked into this, and I didn't know he was a Leeds professor, but I didn't know that at the time when I was looking into it. So I needed to get out of Leeds more. But I'm rambling now. Where was I? But anything that gets people to think about themselves and what's important to them. And just doing that research and using this diagram that I have, I've learned a few things about people themselves. When I talk about dynamics, what I mean is what drives people personally. So the diagram I'm talking about is you analyze a situation, you analyze yourself, and that allows you to put yourself into that situation, some thought about it. And quite often you analyze a situation which you think you want, like an academic role. And I've sat with people, well, let's analyze the situation, and then let's do some analysis of you. And really, if you want the academic role, so it should match perfectly. Here's what drives me or what I want to do, and here's what the academic role and what makes sense in the academic role. And it should match perfectly, and quite often it doesn't. And also, sometimes the drivers that people have can need to be questioned and be negative sometimes. So I had someone who, it just in conversation, they wanted to please their supervisor, and it was a massive driver for them. And I didn't say they shouldn't do that, but it seemed to be a light bulb moment for them. I just said to them, well, you recognize that driver. Is it always going to work for you? And all the way, my philosophy with research and development is about awareness. Because if you can be aware, and it's not just research development, it's in general in life, isn't it? If you can be aware of what you're doing and an impact it has on you and anybody, then at least you have choice. And also, I don't know, if we do some cliches, say I'm fairly disorganized or something like this, well, you might think, well, do you know what? That's me. So yeah, I'll keep that one. But at least you're aware that that's how you are and who you are. And so that research development framework, it does get you to be able to analyze the research globally and then see yourself in that research. And anything that helps combine with thought and the dynamic development ideas and getting yourself to think about you and where you want to go and what you want to do.
Yeah, it really does help in terms of kind of moving you from trainer to coach, doesn't it? In terms of you thinking, and that's one of the things that's really, helped me to do that. And we've been talking about this for years, because it's it was like I was actually managing the group. So it's you got some funding through some Leeds Teaching and Learning awards, And I was actually managing the group to make those decisions at that point, and I was like, I've got to kind of lean back and kind of not go, you've got to give it to but I was really delighted when you got that money and you were able to have that collaboration with some of our other colleagues who've also retired, who we'd known for years.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a good collaboration. We was it Socrates we got to at some point?
I'm sure you did with Richard in the mix.
Good old Richard.
Yes.
We have a train connection, me and Richard as well. We both have a thing.
A thing about trains, yes. When I used to share a train journey with Richard, when we were both worked in Liverpool, he and some other people on that train used to, I won't say bore me stupid, but it was it was like, I have no idea what they're talking about now.
Well, it's a quite a word digress, but it's a question of scale as well. Richard was always interested in the actual big scale trains.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the model size, so we're quite a scale difference.
So, Tony, I think that's taken us on to our final question. So what are your plans for retirement now that podcasts, developing culture, evaluating development, and just being a brilliant colleague aren't taking up all of your time?
Well, one thing I wanted to say, I mean, Emma Sparrow yourself, I don't know who organised it, but you did a sway for me and people contributed. And so as to thank everybody who contributed to that, it's very nice to have some nice things said about you as you retire into the perhaps the sunset. Although I'm returning to Northumberland, so myself and my partner, we actually went to school together, and we're moving back to Northumberland. So we're returning to Northumberland 40 years almost today that we both left and to go our different directions from high school. So that's got quite a nice circular thing to it. And I'm not sure. I don't know what to think about the word retirement either. I don't like it really. I mean, I don't know what it means, to be honest. But I've got me interested in that. I talked about the model trains. I've always been interested in Roman or anything Roman as well. Or maybe I'm just a cliche.
It's a good part of the world to be interested in Romans, isn't
it? We had school trips and things. We've got Corbridge and Vinderlanders and Hadrian's Wall. I suppose it's probably one of the most famous Roman things, Hadrian's Wall, internationally. So that's probably where the interest...
Yeah, certainly outside of Italy itself. Yeah, absolutely. It probably is, even though there probably are Roman remains scattered all across the Middle East and Europe. Absolutely. But I mean, I've loved trips up that way. So yeah, nice.
So we're refurbishing a house up there at the moment. So that's I'm learning some new skills, as it were. So no, I'm excited about it. It's going to be good.
Excellent. Tony, thank you for this chat today. It always has been a pleasure to talk to you over the odd years that we've known each other. But before we hit the stop button on it, can you just say, and we can catch up over another cuppa, can you just say goodbye to all the listeners? Anything you want to say to them?
I just want to say I've enjoyed a career. It's been up and down at times, like all things are, but it's been a privilege to work with so many fantastic people all over the years, and a privilege to work with so many researchers. And I mean that genuinely. It is a privilege. There's so many careers I could have done. I don't have any regrets about moving into the one that I did. And thank you, Ged. It's been a good working with you and everybody else for so many years. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast. Please subscribe so you never miss out on our brand new episodes. And if you're enjoying the discussions, give us some love by dropping a 5-star rating and written review, as it helps other research culturists find us. And please share with a friend and show them how to subscribe. Thanks for listening, and here's to you and your research culture.